Engaging the Taliban, the US and NATO say they encourage a reconciliation process in Afghanistan. But can this group of fighters be a real partner in peace in this war-torn country, and under what conditions? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Laura Kyle. The Taliban, it seems, and the Afghan government are talking, a small step perhaps towards reconciliation. President Hamid Karzai has told Al Jazeera he's had face-to-face meetings with senior members of the Taliban. Previous discussions between the two sides have been largely informal and indirect. The Taliban, however, are denying ever having talked to the government. In public, at least, they insist they'll not hold any negotiations nor agree to a ceasefire until foreign troops leave Afghanistan. Since being overthrown in 2001, the Taliban has been fighting the US-backed Afghan government, as well as NATO and allied forces. Keen to end this long war, Karzai has set up a peace council to facilitate talks with the Taliban. And the United States has vowed to support these negotiations so long as the Taliban meets certain conditions, so-called red lines.
Renounce violence, give up their weapons, renounce al-Qaeda and the insurgency, and abide by the laws and constitution of Afghanistan.
Well, NATO has also said it will assist the reconciliation process, but insists it must come from the Afghan side.
If we get a request and if we can be of practical assistance, we are prepared to do that. But I have to stress once again, this process is and must be Afghan-led.
Well, here to look at the ins and outs of these talks are our guests in Kabul, Mullah Abdul-Salam Zaif, former Taliban ambassador to Pakistan. Also in Kabul, Haroon Mir, Deputy Director of Afghanistan's Center for Research and Policy Studies. And in Washington, D.C., Richard Weitz, Director of the Center for Political Military Analysis at the Hudson Institute. Thank you all very much for joining us here today. Mullah Zaif, if I can start with you, we've heard it from President Karzai himself. He's held face-to-face talks with senior members of the Taliban. Are you ready to confirm for us that, on some level, the Taliban is talking to the Afghan government?
I heard that Mr. Karzai told that I had a meeting with some representative. But I'm not sure until today they had a meeting with them. Yes, maybe some people by the name of Taliban, they had a meeting with them, or some important figure, previous Taliban, they had a meeting with them. And officially with the Taliban to be envoy or representative of Taliban, I'm not sure they had a meeting. An American or the government, they had a meeting with them. But the process today, it's very harm in the war. That's the government, they are attacking the people, they are attacking the NATO, they are attacking. You know, this is some kind of thing, and I think that will be used for some reason. But they will be honest with the process. Until today, it is not that much progress that they had talking with the Taliban or had a place for negotiation with them.
President Karzai says specifically that he's spoken with senior members of the Taliban. Are you suggesting that he's lying?
No, maybe some people, they had a meeting with him, maybe they came with him, sitting with him, but not official representative of the Taliban. They deny that. Yes, they told that we don't have any meeting. The Taliban there, that's became a name for a lot of people. Yes, maybe the previous member of Taliban, maybe some other Taliban, they came to him and met with them. This is the Afghan issue always. It's possible to sit together. But the problem is a very, very sophisticated problem in Afghanistan. It's the Taliban, they are believing that Hamid Karzai wants peace, but he is not able to guarantee that what is going on in Afghanistan. The mainly problem in Afghanistan by the Taliban believing is the presence of foreigner here in Afghanistan. This is the big issue, and this is the priority for the Taliban. And they declare that we have no problem with Mr. Karzai. And the real problem is not between Karzai and Taliban. The real problem between the invader and Taliban. This is the basic problem. This is possible to sit with them, but it's not possible to talk with them officially until they are resolving the problem of foreigner invader in Afghanistan. This is the real issue.
Okay, Mr. Harun Mir, if I can bring you in here, because it does seem to still be a little unclear actually who is talking to President Karzai and his peace council in public. The Taliban still absolutely adamant that it's not involved in any negotiations. Who is talking?
I believe certainly a number of Taliban senior leaders have been in contact with President Karzai for quite a long time, so this is not something new. Even a year ago, a delegation from Kabul traveled to Saudi Arabia. In Turkey, which is another important country in the region, which is playing a very active diplomacy in Afghanistan as well. So Pakistan, another key country which facilitates talks between President Karzai and the Taliban. So there are some backdoor negotiation between President Karzai and some senior Taliban members, but we don't know the specific names of the Taliban leaders who were involved in these talks.
Now, Richard Weiss, the passage of these senior members to Kabul would not be able to happen without NATO allowing them a safe passage. Why has NATO come out at this point to support this process?
The history of these kind of internal conflicts pretty much shows that they almost always end in some kind of negotiated settlement. It's possible one side could win an outright victory, but that's very rare. So it makes sense to try and reach some kind of settlement with those elements of the Taliban who might be willing to negotiate and accept some constraints on the future government. So I would think logically it would be in NATO's interest to get a negotiated settlement. I mean, what we've seen is that most of the NATO governments have had enough and want to get their troops out of there and would be happy if they could come to some kind of negotiated settlement. But they're uncomfortable about pulling out without such an agreement because the obvious fear is that the Taliban will be able to gain the upper hand militarily, as it did in the 1990s, and then it would be difficult to prevent al-Qaeda or some other group from establishing terrorist bases in the country. So you want to negotiate settlement, but you have to have two people to do that, or at least another party to work with on that side, on the Taliban side.
Is the timing of this significant? Is this a point where NATO has perhaps realized that it cannot win this war on the ground?
Well, NATO has never excluded let's be careful. There are two processes at work here. There's something called reconciliations, which we're discussing, which is negotiations between the Karzai government and the Taliban leadership. And then there's reintegration. The idea is you encourage people who might have joined the Taliban because of local grievances or income to rejoin the fold. And NATO has always supported the reintegration. The reconciliation is difficult because a lot of people are worried about what will happen to women's rights, what would happen to the international terrorist movement, and so on. However, the timing is important in that right now you've seen a massive surge in NATO troops and U.S. troops. It's pretty much been the priority agenda for the Obama administration, but this appears to be unsustainable domestically in some of the European countries, and they've already announced deadlines for withdrawing troops, and we've seen the Netherlands, for example, withdraw. So this would be a good time to do it when NATO is strong militarily. The other crossover point will be when the Afghan security forces are strong enough to function without NATO forces, and that deadline keeps on being pushed back. And so the thinking is it'd be good to get an agreement if we can, because it's not clear whether NATO will sustain the effort to allow the Afghan internal security forces to develop strength to be able to deal with the Taliban without the foreign troops.
So the pressure is on. Will the US ever accept the Taliban's demand to hold direct talks with NATO?
I don't see why they would not. I mean, the process of talking is normal within diplomatic negotiations. I'm not aware that NATO has excluded dealing with it. I mean, NATO's preference, and obviously makes sense, is that the Afghan government takes the lead in this effort. It's their country. It's a question of Afghan sovereignty. NATO will do what it can to assist the process. You would want to avoid a situation, which is what I think the Taliban wants, is that you would have negotiations over the deadline for withdrawal of foreign troops. If that's the only issue you want to negotiate, that's not really very helpful from NATO's point of view.
Okay, Mullah Zaev, you've heard there that there is a window for negotiation with NATO, provided certain conditions are met, such as laying down arms, accepting the Afghan constitution, including human rights and the rights of women. Is that something that the Taliban is willing to abide by?
There are two kind of problem. One problem is international, I think. One problem is national. International problem, this is the presence of foreigners in Afghanistan. It is possible to be resolved first. This is the priority for the Taliban too. And this is possible to be discussed with the NATO, because the NATO, they are stronger than the government in Afghanistan. The more obstacle in the way that was created by the foreigner in Afghanistan. The Taliban, they are in isolation from the foreigner, not from Hamid Karzai. And also the Taliban, they are condemned from the war community. I think that this will be the priority for the Taliban first, to finish occupation of Afghanistan. They said that Afghanistan is occupied by foreigner here. Until the foreigner, they are here, they are feeling differentiation and depriving from their right, and they are feeling they are in isolation, they are feeling they are in condemned, and they are not coming to talk and sit with Hamid Karzai or with the government to discuss this issue. The second issue, the problem is the national problem. Yes, this is problem. It's not related with a foreigner, and the foreigner should not interfere. The constitution and the other issue in Afghanistan, this is not the right of the NATO or American to discuss and to interfere in this issue in Afghanistan. I think this is the separate issue will be resolved between Afghans. It is possible to be discussed between Afghans in the future for the system, for the government. It's possible, but before condition and free condition to be put in, and the Taliban, this is not making problem. It will be not possible to make any progress in the negotiation.
Okay, well, let's look a little bit now at the Peace Council. That's the body that was recently set up to negotiate with the Taliban. It's a 70-member makeup, and it's come under a lot of criticism, not least because its chairman is an ex-president and an old foe of the Taliban. But even he is optimistic that headway can be made.
There's no doubt the movement of the Taliban leadership and discussion with them is hard, but we shouldn't wait. Even if they cannot come to Afghanistan directly, they can send their representatives. Some Taliban members have already entered into talks during their travels to other countries.
Former President Burhanuddin Rabbani speaking there. Harun Mir, there is interest, according to him, but it needs time to grow. What do you think of this Peace Council? Can it succeed?
Well, I think the Peace Council is just a cover for President Karzai to show that this peace plan is a national peace plan, that Afghans from different ethnic groups, from different backgrounds, are involved in this peace process. But we all know that the true negotiation will be between the Afghan government, the Taliban, and we have certainly regional and neighboring players as well, because Pakistan is a key player in order to facilitate any kind of peace negotiation between the Afghan government and the Taliban. And also we have other players in the region, Iran, India, Russia. So it is very difficult to build a consensus among regional countries before they agree to accept the terms of the peace negotiation, because the conflict in Afghanistan has always been multidimensional. So this is the national domestic political forces. Of course, we have the former Northern Alliance that President Rabbani was representing, the Taliban, and unfortunately the Afghan civil society is so weak that which is not represented in any kind of peace negotiation, and certainly regional neighboring players, but also international stakeholders. So it is very difficult at this stage to say that this peace negotiation could lead to any kind of tangible results in immediate term. But certainly it is good to negotiate, but I don't think that we could reach any kind of agreement soon.
Rich advice. NATO is calling for maximum transparency of this peace council. Do you think it's going to get it?
The fear among some NATO governments is you're going to end up with a sort of an elite deal in which, for example, the warlords and the Taliban leaders will get together and say, okay, we'll divide power, we'll forget about women's rights, we won't worry about, past atrocities, we can work this out, get rid of the foreigners. And that would not sit well with some European governments and some Americans who are very committed to human rights, and basically you want to avoid a situation in which you have impunity for past atrocities. On the other hand, there are some people within NATO who say, great, we don't care anymore about Afghanistan. If they want to work out a deal, that's terrific. Just keep Al-Qaeda from turning into a terrorist base. So, and of course, in public, the NATO governments have to say they're committed to women's rights and so on. But I think, from what I've heard, there are some who would just, at this point, be ready for any kind of deal. But at the moment, that's why they want the transparency. There's a fear that they're just going to have an elite deal in which the people will suffer. Those who are the powerless will remain so.
Mullah Zaif, an elite deal between the Taliban and Afghanistan's warlords, is that on the cards?
There is, I think, two kind of things. The American, they started. One is reintegration. One is the reconciliation process. That American, they are interested in a reintegration process, which is calling to the Taliban to come join with the government, and they want to be the Taliban disappear. This is the foreign issue. And the reconciliation process, this is maybe possible that the warlord also, that some people here in Afghanistan, they are difficult and they don't want the Taliban to come back, and they are pushing the NATO, and they are giving consultation to them to do fight against them. There is some kind of a problem. That's problem. I think this will be possible to resolve through reconciliation process, but this is not the priority for the Taliban. Yeah, there is some kind of link in the problem, but not link between Lord and war in the Taliban. They are not supporting each other, but they are against each other.
Now, in all this, as we've heard, Pakistan is a crucial player. On Tuesday, Pakistan's Prime Minister Yusuf Raza Gilani issued a reminder of Islamabad's importance in the peace talks between the Afghan government and the Taliban.
Look, nothing can happen without us, because we are part of the solution. We are not part of the problem.
Mullah Zaif, you were once the Taliban ambassador to Pakistan. In what way is Pakistan crucial to any peace efforts in Afghanistan?
Really, the Pakistan, they are not. The Pakistan is not in the position to do any role neutrally in Afghanistan. They did a very wrong thing with the Taliban. They did support the American against Afghanistan, and they came through Pakistan to Afghanistan. They given opportunity to American to use their the airfield and use the intelligence information from Pakistan. Yes, the Pakistan, they want to be everything under control of Pakistan, and the Pakistan want to deal with American, that they showing that we can bring peace to Afghanistan. And recently, the talking of peace is very, very hard in Afghanistan. That increasing the concern of Pakistan that peace will come without their opportunity in Afghanistan. Maybe this is the reason, but Pakistan is not in this position. Yes, it is important for Pakistan to be ensured from Afghanistan that the peace coming in Afghanistan will be not against Pakistan. And the role of other countries which they are feeling the Pakistan enemy will be not increased in Afghanistan. This will be the reason the Pakistan they are trying to do. But the Pakistan is important in the region, but they are not the real honest player in the region. They cannot able to do anything what they want.
Okay, Haroon Mir, Pakistan is impartial because it supports the US. Is that your view, or would you have a different take on that regarding the ISI?
Certainly, what the Pakistani Prime Minister has said the other day is true about the role of Pakistan in Afghanistan, because Pakistan could play a positive and constructive role in Afghanistan if they want. But unfortunately, they have been playing a very negative role in the past 9 years. So if there is a change in policy in Pakistan, we always welcome it in Afghanistan, because this is our neighbor. We could not change our geography. So it is crucial to have the support of the Pakistanis, because the Taliban leadership, they live in Pakistan. Their families live in Pakistan. And the Pakistanis exercise a tremendous leverage over the Taliban leadership. Just the example of Mullah Brother, that he was arrested in Pakistan because he was one of the important and senior Taliban member who started negotiation with Kabul. So the role of Pakistan is very important, but other players in the region could play an important role. Saudi Arabia, Turkey, which are close allies of Pakistan, could influence Pakistani decision. But certainly India, Russia are also important players, because after all, we have to have a true reconciliation in Afghanistan, because the conflict has been going on for the past 3 decades. So a lot of forces in Afghanistan are also important. If without involving all these forces, we could not reach to a permanent peace in Afghanistan.
Richard Weiss, the last word to you. Are you hopeful that there can be a break in this stalemate before the US starts drawing down its troops in July next year?
What I think will happen is you'll get agreement with some Taliban, but again, it's not clear how representative they'll be. The one obvious concern would be that this is going to be a ruse. They've seen what happened with North Vietnam or other areas, so they'll just make an agreement, say they'll do these things, the U.S. troops and other NATO troops leave, and then they go back to fighting, and there's no way the Western governments would put their troops back in. So that's the main fear, that right now you've got troops in there and they're fighting, but once they leave, it's going to be very hard to sustain anything other than an air and drone campaign, which would be just attacking targets in Afghanistan and Pakistan, which is very unpleasant from terms of all sorts of points of view.
Well, it certainly isn't a popular war there in America. Obama is certainly wanting to get out of Afghanistan.
I think that if President Obama wanted to, he could sustain the war in Afghanistan for a while. It's not like Iraq or Vietnam, where there's a strong peace movement. There's just a lot of dissatisfaction. I think the greater problem would be in Europe than it would be in the United States.
Okay, plenty of ifs and buts and maybes in Afghanistan. We will, of course, be following the process very closely, and I'm sure there'll be plenty more discussions such as this ahead of us. Thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen, today in Kabul, Mullah Zaif and Haroon Mir, and in Washington, Richard Weiss. And thanks to you, too, for being with us. If you have any comments, do email us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. See you again soon.